Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to see that you came because it seems that we are sort of a little bit reduced in numbers because of the cold. But yes, I'm really happy to see you all, and I'm really thrilled and have the great pleasure to present to you today Dr. Peter Fritsch. I think many of you know Peter. Peter is a biodiversity scientist interested in plant diversity, comparative morphology, biogeography, with a focus on the Heath family, Ericaceae, and its relatives. He's passionate about biodiversity conservation and capacity building, and works both nationally and internationally. Current projects include digitization across 40 collections in the Texas and Oklahoma Regional Consortium of Herbaria, biodiversity surveys of plants and lichens in the Philippines, investigation into phylogenomics and evolution of North American blueberries, Vaccinium section Cyanococcus. Peter did his PhD at the Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden and the Claremont Graduate School in California in 1995, and since 2016, he's the Vice President for Research at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden and the Botanical Research Institute of Texas. Welcome, Peter.
Warm welcome. I really appreciate it. And thank you also for your hospitality for hosting my director and I, Patrick Newman. We actually toured the programs here on Wednesday. And I think he really enjoyed himself and really got a lot out of it because he says he's going to steal all your ideas now. But really, no, honestly, we're both so impressed, of course, with all the things that are going on here, all the programs, and it's just, what more can you say? I mean, it's Missouri Botanical Garden. Come on, it's like, but we are aspirational, and we want to use you as kind of a model going forward. And if we can achieve a fraction of what you achieved here, we'll be consider ourselves really lucky. So also thank you for inviting me for this seminar. Now I can get to tell you all about the Philippines and our work there. This is a biosurvey inventory of the plants and lichens of the Philippines. This is a project that's been going on for 7 years. This is the 7th year now. It was supposed to be a 4-year project, but there was delays in the beginning, and of course then COVID hit. And so we couldn't go to the Philippines for 2 full years. And so now we had to pick it up again, and now it's going full steam. So our last expedition is going to be this summer. And hopefully I'll tell you a little more about the future of what we're thinking about doing. So I'll tell you about the physical geography and biodiversity of the Philippines, a little on the historical, botanical collecting expeditions of ours, cool plants, new species, student research, and some future research. I think you all know probably where the Philippines is located. It's on the western rim of the Pacific, in the Ring of Fire, so-called, and it's solidly in the tropical zone, kind of the north-central part of an area called Malaysia in Southeast Asia. So there's more than 7,000 islands in this archipelago. It's 300,000 square kilometers, and that's about the size of, in terms of land area, Arizona. So it's not all that huge. I mean, Arizona's a big state, but it's a country, not all that big. It's sandwiched between Taiwan and Borneo, and to the south of that is Sulawesi, and to the kind of the southeast is New Guinea. And there's 3 sections: Luzon, the middle part, the Visayas, and then Mindanao in the south. And then there's, Palawan. Oh, did it. There we go. There's Palawan, which is actually politically part of Luzon. But it's got more floristic affinity to Borneo, which is very interesting. There's typhoons. The weather comes from the east and flows to the west. After the Philippines, I think, Gunter, Hong Kong gets hit once in a while with these things, Singapore, etc. But it hits the Philippines first, and it hits with a bang. Usually it avoids the southern Philippines, where we do most of our field work, fortunately. Usually hits around the central area, the Visayas, and then kind of goes up southern Luzon and poops out in Manila. But these things come regularly, and they're a real menace. The dry season's from November to April, and but we're usually doing our field work in the wet season, just the way things work out with academic schedules and things like that. The geology is mostly, it's volcanic. It's sandwiched between two opposing subduction zones, and so that accounts for the volcanoes and accounts for the mountain building. Then also, the very important aspect of the Philippines is most of the land area has really only gone above, sea level or subaerial, as they say, in the last 10 million years or so. And, so that lands have not been occupied, mostly oceanic islands. There's a couple of fragments from the continent in Mindoro Island, and also Palawan, I think, is also continental. But most of them are oceanic, and that means that they've been rather isolated relative to the rest of mainland Asia. Pleistocene history is very interesting. Of course, it's connected to Sundaland and 20,000 years ago when the sea levels dropped over 100 meters. And what's really, I think is really cool, I never really appreciated, is you can actually see these rivers under the water, which I didn't really realize. I mean, you can see the channels from when Sundaland was above water. That's just pretty cool. So it had a stronger connection to mainland Asia then. It also had larger connections between islands. There were areas of like Greater Mindanao, for example, and Greater Luzon. And so people have thought that there might be a correlation between those areas and kind of some historical biogeography. And it seems to hold pretty well, or sort of well, for mammals so far, but it hasn't been tested in plants. And so that'd be a very interesting thing, I think, to test. Okay, so a little bit about the Philippines geology and habitats. It's mostly volcanic, as I said. It's volcanic. And so there's volcanoes everywhere. There are things that look just like the things in the upper left all over the place. And that's Mount Makiling in Luzon. And then in the bottom left is, we're standing at a caldera of Mount Banahaw. So we're looking across to the other part of the caldera. And then in the other two slides are Mount Apa, which is the highest peak in the Philippines at over 10,000 feet. And you can see the sulfur vents and then the boiling water. So it's very active. A lot of karst in the Philippines, especially near the coasts, as you might expect. And this eroded, rugged, very difficult to get around. And of course, the plants are much different in these environments. There's a lot of begonias, love these areas. Vaccinium hates it, but that's okay. I'll collect it anyway. A very important biome. And then there's ultramafic, which is also very, very interesting, of course. Ultramafic is, I'm sure probably most of you know this very specialized soil type with a lot of toxic heavy metals like chromium and manganese, cobalt, et cetera, and so only specific plants can grow on it. And there's a lot of areas in the Philippines like this. There's also, it's kind of a gradation. It goes for it. You can sort of see semi-ultramafic and things like that as you go along. Just from low elevation to high elevation, just a survey of the habitats. This is lowland tropical rainforest. There's hardly any of this left. We were lucky enough to sample one on our last expedition. This is, your buttressed large trees, and in Southeast Asia, of course, is Dipterocarpaceae is one of the main components, which you don't really see much of the neotropics, and very stratified canopies and subcanopies, etc. Then you get tropical lower montane rainforests. That comes in at around, I think, 700 meters, something like this, 500. And that you see a lot more epiphytes. You see not so much buttressing, and you see these huge agathis trees on the right. They're just really spectacular, these gymnosperms. Above that, at maybe 1,200 above, is something called the mossy forest. And also tropical upper montane rainforest, colloquially named the mossy forest for obvious reasons. And John Brina loves this habitat, of course, and it's very cool up there, and it's very foggy, and very wet and just gorgeous. Above that, sometimes you get this scraggly kind of low forest, and again, very foggy and very cold, somewhat like heathland, or the rhododendrons like it up here, vacciniums like it up there. You get heath balds, or not heath grassland balds. This is the top of Mount Hamiguitan in the southwest part of Mindanao, and then you can get something called a bonsai forest, which again is very, very, very low. This kind of stuff is, I think, common at the higher elevations in Southeast Asia, so it's all part of that same syndrome. And at the top of Mount Pulag in Luzon, you can even get like a dwarf bamboo. So this is the genus Eushania, and that's I think I don't know if that's endemic. I think it's not endemic, but it's not common at all. So there are other habitats, riverine type habitats. There's mangrove forests. There's over 36,000 kilometers of coastline in the Philippines. So you can imagine there's a lot of beach strands, things like that. And then you can even get like peat bog marshes, things like that. That's a Gusan marsh, which we have not had the chance to go to yet, unfortunately. A little bit about plant diversity. So we're counting 9,530 species of vascular plants and counting. There are no endemic families, as far as I know, in the Philippines, and there's only 20 endemic genera. And I think that probably is a result of what I mentioned before, because the islands are relatively recent, relative to the mainland. There hasn't been a lot of chance for deep clay divergence. There's been apparently lots of chances, though, for species level divergence, because there's a lot of endemism. There's over 50% endemism in the vascular plant species. Really, really quite amazing. And some of these, of course, are really narrow island-specific things, or even mountain-specific things. Of course, there are sadly many biodiversity threats. There's only 3 to 7% forests left. Who really knows of the primary forest remaining? It's ranked 4th globally for threatened forests. You can see that the green is pretty much all that's left for primary. Having said that, secondary forests can be extremely rich. So, I mean, we still have a lot to do even in secondary forests. The threats come from tree harvesting, for example. This is the usual suspects: agriculture, mining, fire, and the frequency of fires, and the population. When I first gave a version of this talk maybe 5 years ago, there was 88 million people in the Philippines. Now there's 115. So they're right on track to hit the 148 million mark, apparently, by 2050. Okay, documenting the Philippine flora. So the blue line represents the cumulative percentage of species, and the red line is cumulative of specimens. And you can see kind of flat line. That time period was mainly Spanish rule in the Philippines. There were collectors from Spain that went there. And like, for example, the Malaspina expedition with Thaddeus Henke. But then you have this huge spike in the early part of the 1900s, and then you get a little bit of a gradual incline again, and then another spike in the 90s. Well, the first spike is from Elmer Drew Merrill, who was the head of Bureau of Science at the University of Philippines, and he developed a 250,000 specimen herbarium with many duplicates distributed worldwide. Maybe you've seen some of Merrill's specimens. And he directed many American and Filipino botanical collectors, for example, A.D.E. Elmer and Ramos and Idaño, and also came out with the first enumeration of Philippine flowering plants. And sadly, the herbarium was completely destroyed in 1944 in the Battle of Manila. And so it's all gone. Fortunately, we have those duplicates. That's absolutely critical. And they're widely distributed, so that's a really important legacy. Then there was a plant Philippine inventory, 1991, 1997 approximately, developed at the Bishop Museum, and then it moved to Brit. And the leads were Cy Somer and the Philippine National Herbarium Director, Domingo Medulid, and then Ben Stone and John Papoli, for example, were on that team. And they made 23,000 numbers, so quite substantial, and 7 to 10 duplicates per number. And they're also pretty widely distributed. And one of the most complete sets is at Britt. There are other sets at, Bishop and I think Smithsonian. Leiden, I think, has a set. Kew, I think, has a set. I've seen material from those places. Along with, and so total there's 24,000 Philippines collections at Britt. I want to come back to that in a little bit. So the land plants are still quite poorly known, and even despite the bulk of collecting so far, it's just a super diverse country. So many species still await discovery and description. About a quarter of the plants described greater than 50 years ago are either known only from the type or only a few collections. I'm speaking to the choir, you know how it all is. For numerous others, descriptions are inadequate, and there's no detailed flora for any of the major islands. This is just the state of, plants are supposed to be so well known, right, relative to things like insects. Well, they're still not well known. There's still tons of work that needs to be done. Another kind of way to measure this is to look at the percentage of unidentified specimens, which has actually increased quite a bit over time, of Philippine specimens from, a very small percentage to almost over 30%. So, and well, we looked at the data and we saw that Mindanao in particular is pretty poorly collected, even relative to other areas of the Philippines. So you can see Philippines wide there at the bottom. You can see the species accumulation curve kind of flattening out at the top, but it's still quite steep in Mindanao. So as a result of that, we basically decided, and another way to look at this is let's see if this works. Oh, there we go. Look at, for example, Mindanao here. This is number of specimens per land area average, and this is Luzon, which is 38, so almost 3.5 times as many. So there, and you can just go on Bohol and Negros and Cebu, Panay, Samar. They're all kind of central southern Philippines, and they're all pretty low. So we decided then, so one of the big advances in the floristics of the Philippines, however, is this development of Coe's Digital Flora of the Philippines. This is by Peter Pelzer, Julie Barcelona, and Dan Nickrent. And this has been really, really important. It's constantly being updated. It's enumeration of species with synonyms and type and distribution information. There's no keys and there's no descriptions. And it's also a little static. It's not like it doesn't have full search functionality yet and things like that, but they continue to improve this site. So this is really, really important. And then all the photographs that have been taken, Peter is a great photographer and he puts these all online, and there's still so many species though that don't have photographs. There's a lot of work to be done on that too. New species continue to be described. This is 11 species at the year 2020. There's going to be more from our survey work I think even this year and last year and then the coming years. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the background of my experience with botanical expeditions. So I started in 2011, and it was at the California Academy of Science. I did this very large biodiversity project, including marine components and many, many land groups as well. And that was funded by the Hearst Foundation. So that was my first time to the Philippines. And gradually just kept going back for various reasons. We had Darren Pennies and I had a Melastomataceae NSF grant, and so we went twice to the Philippines. Moved down to Mindanao and developed collaborations with folks at Central Mindanao University. And we've been with them like ever since. And we sampled several places in Mindanao and Camiguin Island. So all that is to set the stage, all this like lack of botanical knowledge, the South being less understood than the North, and our collaborations, especially in the Southern Philippines, kind of led us to think, well, gee, we really are poised to write a grant proposal for this project. And so we did, and in 2017 and in 2018 we were funded. And so it's technically a 4-year project, but like I said, it's been going on now for 3 extra years for various reasons. It's called Plant and Lichen Discovery in the Southern Philippines. And the main partners are Britt and Central Mindanao University, as I mentioned, and University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and that's where Darren Penny's is. Other collaborators, of course, first on the list, Missouri Botanical Garden. That's with John Brennan, has been on every expedition, I think, except for Expedition 1, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then Gordon McPherson, Dr. McPherson was on the first expedition, but not on the subsequent one. So we had the great pleasure of having them on the team. And then there's folks at California Academy of Sciences, Jim Shivak, Dan Nikrin at Cornell, and other folks have been coming on expeditions like June Wynn at Smithsonian, Adam Black from the Bartlett Tree Expert Company, and Vanessa Handley at Montgomery Botanical Center, Elise Gerlach at Geneva Botanical Garden, and Bibiana Moncada at Berlin. And so let's see. And there's other Philippine partners, the Philippine National Herbarium. There's University of the Philippines, Manila, and a couple of universities in Mindanao. So what are the goals of this project? The original goals are to conduct 8 major field expeditions to study and document the land plants and the lichens of the southern Philippines. And when I say southern Philippines, again, I mean Visayas and Mindanao. And collect about 80,000 dried specimens. Now, we've only been able to do 5 expeditions. We're probably only going, on this money, we're only probably going to be able to do 6. However, I think you'll see why we were able to collect a lot more specimens than we originally kind of thought we were going to collect. And so we really, I think right now we actually are at least the 80,000 mark. That includes the lichens and the bryos, mind you, and it's fairly straightforward or easier to make duplicates out of those than it is to make duplicates out of vascular plants, but nonetheless, they are specimens. And so then we're going to digitize and freely disseminate the data. We're going to digitize the specimens. We have these live living plant photographs. We try to photograph every single specimen, at least for vascular plants, and many photos for the bryophytes and also for the lichens. We take a silica gel sample of every vascular plant that we can, except for the ones that are so small where we really can't spare DNA material. We focus on the collection, the herbarium voucher. And for bryophytes, apparently you can get DNA out of the actual specimens, so we don't really need to do that for the bryophytes. And for the lichens, it's very tricky because for the lichens, the DNA, some of the groups goes bad pretty quickly. And so it's a real time-limited thing to get those lichens dry and to get them sent overseas so that we can extract the DNA. And we want to publish new species. We've already done so. Florulas, we've already done some of that. New taxonomic treatments, we've done some of that with our students. And carry out a wide range of other activities for science and society, for example, workshops and lectures, student training, which I'll mention in a minute, and then local community engagement to the local tribes, for example. And make ex situ collections too. This wasn't originally part of the project, but we've been able to add this ex situ component, and they pay the airfare and we pay the field expenses for these folks, and that's the folks from the Bartlett Tree Company and Vanessa Handley, and they know how to get these ex situ collections. They know exactly what to do. In order to get them passed through USDA, they have to be immaculately cleaned, and then of course all the permits that are required, both transport permit, collecting permit, and export permits. But they've been able to do it, and so we're really, it's another really nice, it's kind of a nice extra angle to the project. Here's the localities we've surveyed to date. Now you'll notice most of them are in Mindanao. That's because our collaborators are in Mindanao, and it's just a lot easier for us to work in areas of Mindanao than in other areas. They have the best connections in Mindanao. Although having said that, we have collected in Negros Island here, Camigan Island here, and Dinagat, and we want to go back to Dinagat. There's a lot of ultramafic there, and there's really interesting plants there. It's also a horrible mining site. It's like they've been designated like the national mining site of the Philippines, so it's really a mess. And you also notice that most of the localities are in central Mindanao, and that's because it's because where the safest parts of the island are. And so, like the farther east, you get more of this like so-called NPA activity, New People's Army, And to the west, there's like Muslim areas, which actually now there's been a peace treaty signed, I think under the Duterte administration, and so it's a lot more settled down than I think that it's been in a long time. So I think we have the ability or potential to start accessing some of these sites in the southwest and over here. Just some of the publications, you don't read them, but just to remind myself that we have lots of publications out and coming out. So here's the field team from the last expedition. You can see John, one of our bryologists, of course, and then BB, who's this from left to right, to the lichenologist from Berlin. Jim Shivak, he's from Cal Academy, another bryologist, is intrepid. Jim is kind of one of my, I don't know how, he just never stops. He's just full of energy, and he's just really inspirational. That's me in the middle. Manuela Del Forno, lichenologist, and second from the right is Darren Penny, who's one of the co-PIs, and vascular plants, and then there's Adam Black from the Bartlett Tree Company. Adam's another real trooper. I mean, we're all troopers. John is amazing too, for heaven's sakes. I'm always bringing up the rear, honestly. And then in the middle there is Victor Amoroso. And Victor Amoroso is our main collaborator. He's been wonderful. He's really easy to work with. You know, there's bumps in the road for any project like this, but all in all, I mean, it's worked really smoothly and very successfully. And he's really great. This is the reason we're able to collect so many specimens, because we have basically a small army with us on some of these expeditions. And this doesn't even include the porters. We're not at a campsite here, so we didn't really need porters, but and we didn't need a lot of cooks and things like that. But this is a field team example. This thing is called a jeepney. I don't know if you've ever heard of a jeepney, but jeepneys, there were many, many jeepneys in the Philippines just post-World War II. I think they were made out of like scrap metal that was around. And so these are really durable vehicles. They're also really polluting, and so they're trying to get kind of rid of the jeepneys. But for some reason, Central Mindanao University still has a jeepney, and so we use this jeepney, as you can see, to pile all the rice and all the other stuff in our gear and things like that. And this is what the inside of a jeepney looks like, with how many people can fit inside a jeepney. We're just trying to break the record. I think there's 16 people in this slide. And of course, the jeepneys and other vehicles can't often get up the slopes because it's clay and it's slippery. I'm sure many of you have been there before. So the Filipinos are very ingenious, and they're very, you know, they just get it done. And so whatever it takes to get to a place, they just do it. It rains a lot in the Philippines, shock, I know, but sometimes the trails turn into this, you know, basically rivers, and you're just having to cope with it all, and it's fine. It actually keeps the heat away, so it's not that bad. Campsites, sometimes they turn into small villages in a muddy mess, and so we all wear rubber boots now just for practicality. You know, the cooking and everything, the mountains of rice need to be made for everybody, and they make these nice little makeshift tables, which is really pretty cool, that we have this kind of nice horizontal space in which to work for processing the specimens. And then once in a while, we get to actually stay in little huts and stuff. And so I think we had 12 or 13 people jammed into this thing. But that's a roof, you know, that's all right. One of the interesting things that we deal with is, so we work with the indigenous people almost every single trip, because these mountainous areas, that's their jurisdiction. It's kind of sometimes a dual jurisdiction, where you have the indigenous tribes and the government organization called DENR, which is the environmental governmental agency. And so we have to work with both of those, in order to gain access to the land, in order to be able to collect. One of the things we have to do is we have to participate in these rituals. So I don't know, maybe some of you have done this kind of thing in Asia. I don't know if I think it's not exclusive to the Philippines. But basically the idea is, they intone in like the local language, and they're basically saying, protect us while we're up on the mountain, and so they do a sacrifice of 3 chickens. Usually it's 3 chickens. Sometimes it's actually more. It all depends on the tribe and what the deal is, so to speak. And so they go through this ritual. Is really quite fascinating. And sometimes, so then we have to put coins on the altar, and then we each take 1 coin, and then we wrap it in cloth, and then we go up with it. We either keep it in our pocket, or else we hang it on a branch in the mountain, and that keeps the evil spirits at bay or whatever. And so it's very, very important that we do these kinds of things and respect all their customs while we are there. And we haven't had any issues per se lately, except for that one time. But other than post grant, no problem. It's been fine. And usually what we do then is, of course, we hire the locals as parataxonomists. Some of them know the plants extremely well, so we want their expertise, and so we get exchange information. We often write down the common name in the tribal language. Usually we're working with this group called the Talandigs, which is Central Mindanao tribe. And, most of them are really super helpful and really energetic and are very excited to see us there. So it's really fun. So that same area then, in this particular case, actually turned into our processing area. They were kind enough to let us use that as the processing area. It was the only kind of dry area around. And so here we are all working diligently at night, and it's all good. We work as teams, and so each of the individuals in the team has kind of their own role. Of course, now it's not just herbarium specimens, it's more like the extended specimen network idea that you may have heard about. And so we're taking photographs, we're doing silica gel, what else are we doing? We're making the herbarium specimens, and we're taking the data. So here I am taking the data. Jano Piso there is doing the silica gel. These folks are doing on the press. And then Mav Tamayo is here doing the photography. And so we try to do this all as kind of like a well-oiled machine. And we actually have 2 seed plant groups because there's just so much diversity. And we only overlap maybe about 10-15% of the similar species. We just go on different trails in the same area. We come up with completely different things. Once in a while, yes, we bag and drag. I'm sorry, but it's just critical sometimes when it's just pouring rain. You don't want all the newspapers to get totally soaked, and so we then process the rest of the material back at the campsite or the camp base. Sometimes we have tree climbers, which is really helpful, and sometimes, so this one has actually a pole pruner in their hands. We usually don't have to do this because we have the benefit of using Dr. McPherson's patented, I think, or maybe I don't know if they're patented, but they're pole pruners, and we rely on those, of course, a lot to get the plants down from the mid canopy and all the epiphytes and lianas and things like that. Here we are working at night. I'm over here somewhere doing the data, and working away. That's what we do. We start early and we end late. Let's maximize our time. You might know about this. Maybe you neotropical folks don't know about this, but this is called the land leech, and it's one of the hazards in the Philippines. And it's gross, but it doesn't really hurt you. It's not like an infectious thing unless you scratch the bite, and then it might get infected. But really, it's just kind of a bloody mess, and it gets your socks all red. And you can get into pods of these things, and so you just be walking around, and you can see them waiting for you. You see them kind of hanging over the trail and going, "Oh, okay, yeah." And then there's rattan palm. That's kind of a nuisance because what it'll do is it has this tendril-like appendage on the end of the leaf, and then it'll have spines on all of those, and you can get tangled up in that thing, and then you really almost have to have somebody else get the thing off of you. You really can't get it off yourself. One more is dendrocnidae. It's a nasty thing. It's an urticaceae, and it has a real painful I've thought I've gotten it several times, but I think I've really never gotten it, And it's like really painful, really hurts for weeks, and sometimes it doesn't go away for even months, apparently. There are many species of this, so it's really hard to know, it's really hard to kind of identify. It kind of doesn't look like much, but it's got these really nasty urticating hairs. Of course, the worst thing of all, of course, is what? Well, snakes, flies around, little. Mosquitoes are the worst because that carries dengue fever, of course, malaria. We haven't had to worry so much about malaria, but dengue fever is pretty bad. It even occurs on the campus of CMU, so we've got to be very careful. Just cover up, don't mess around. There's Dr. McPherson there overseeing the operation. So we alcohol the specimens because they'll rot by the time we get them down from the mountain. And so we do this, just soak them, and they'll last for months. If they're properly cared for, if they're tied well and not allowed to evaporate. And they have at CMU, they have this very interesting drying method here where they have the stand up, and then they have a big weight on the top, and here's the board, and then, as the specimens dry, the pile gets smaller and smaller as the water evaporates out. And there's a fan at the bottom and a heater. That's pretty cool. But, of course, that's for vascular plants. For bryophytes and lichens, it's a different story. What they really need, the ideal situation for biologists and lichenologists, is an air-conditioned room, because that'll dry things very, very quickly. And sometimes that's really hard to get. And as John knows, sometimes even if you get an air-conditioned room, it may not stay air-conditioned. So when you're up in the field and somebody decides to turn it off, and then kind of it's wet again. And so... But I think we've had pretty good overall success with that operation. I mean, with that kind of method. All right, just a little bit about the largest plant families. I'll go over time here. Okay, largest plant families by species. Again, it's not really much of a surprise. The orchids, the rubes, the Apocynaceae beans. Poaceae is unusual because so many of them are naturalized. So really, that shouldn't really make the top list, but there's so many weedy ones. Myrtaceae, Cyperaceae. Cyperaceae, you always make a point of collecting Cyperaceae because people don't collect them. And so I think we've done pretty well on Cyperaceae. It's hard to know when it's a good collection or not because so many of them are like roadside weeds. But I think just a lot of the diversity is in that roadside. The largest genera, Bulbophyllum is the highest one, then Hoya, then Syzygium. Begonias are very, very big. They're orchids, Psychotria, and on and on and on. We want to make Vaccinium. Our goal is to make this go into the top 20, and we're going to try to see if we can find so many species that hits us in the top 20. Just a joke, sort of. Then, of course, a wide diversity of orchids. If I can remember these orchid genera names, Micranthes, I think. And this is Phalaenopsis. This is two species of Coelogine. This is all on our last expedition. Stichorchis, very odd thing. And then this, what is it? They call it mycoheterotrophic orchid. And this is Gastrodia, very odd sort of, doesn't look like an orchid. I mean, it's all, I think, covered by the tepals and things. Gesneriaceae is very big. Sertandra, many new species of Sertandra are going to be published as a result of our project. There's a PhD student as one of our team members. Rhododendron, of course. I think rhododendron actually needs a lot of work. You don't see it very often. I mean, it's sporadic, but especially in flower. Naturally, the Nepenthes. This genus here is Medinilla. This is in the Melastomataceae, a huge genus, of course, throughout Southeast Asia. But many, many endemic species of Medinilla, and they're spectacular. Some towns actually have local holidays based on like Medinilla. So they'll hang like these paper mache type things that look just like this all over the town. Very cool thing in the Lamiales. I love this thing. It's called Pentaphragma. Very weird. It's its own family, and it's just really kind of beautiful. Strongylodon, which is a jade vine. Jade vine, and the This photograph photographs never do, I think, jade vine justice because it's just super vibrant, this weird shade of like teal or blue, and it's just really amazing. I think it's bat pollinated. Then we've got Ardisia, and of course, I'm not going to go through every genus, I promise, but who can resist, you know? So just kind of a fireworks display of some of the genera. We've got, of course, Ficus, which is huge, of course, everywhere, but Philippines is no exception. Dilenia in the Dileniaceae. And then what's this? This is Calicarpa. So some of you might know Calicarpa is American beautyberry, but it just goes berserk in Asia. Many, many species. Can't remember this Araceae genus. Here we got it. Leucocasia? Is that it? Colocasia? Maybe, yeah. Anyway, it's a monster. These monster monocots, they're so hard to press. You know, palms, and they're so important in terms of the diversity, you can't ignore them. So you end up, sorry for monocot folks, I apologize, but it's hard, it's hard. Eliocarpus, and then Freycinetia, the liana, Osmoxylon, this is Neonoclea, the Rubiaceae, Egomyla, in the Gesneriaceae, all really important genera in the Philippines. The parasites are interesting too. We've got a Balanophora in Asia. We've got this Loranthaceae are quite important component. The hemiparasitic plants. This is Decasnina. We found Thismia on our last expedition. Very exciting find. Yeah, I think it might be a new record too. I'm not sure. Another two in the Orbancaceae. This one only grows on bamboo. It's a parasite on bamboo. The name is Christosonia. Of course, we want to find this thing, and we've never found it. We look, naturally we look. We find tetrastigma, and the first thing you do is you look down on the ground or on the vine. Yeah, you're not finding that. Frustrating. We will. All right, bryophytes. So let's see. Is this spiridens?
On the right.
Yes, on the right. Yay. Okay, I got spiridens. I think the laser pointer is going out. And on the left is squint. Oh, it's okay. They're obviously extremely important component of the flora, and our bryophyte team is just going gangbusters. And here's just kind of a sampling. I don't know these genera. John does. Yeah, because you sent me the photo. Yeah, right. Yeah. Trivia. This one. No, sorry, this one. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Very primitive little.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And then I know this one. This is Dawsonia. This is the giant of the bryophyte world. This is like the equivalent of a forest for bryophytes. It's, I think, the tallest, right? Isn't it the tallest bryophyte?
Yeah, some can be up to.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then we have lichens. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not good with my lichens, although I'm really fascinated by them. And we collect a lot of lichens. New species, just a sampler. We have a new Hypericum. We've got this Actinostaches and the Schizaceae. This is a sample of Vaccinium, one of our new species. And then this interesting thing in the Burmaniaceae, Gymnosiphon, and an orchid. There's going to be more. Then we have graduate student. We sponsor and mentor graduate students on this project. This is my student, Maverick Tamayo. He's really great. He studies Vaccinium. And this is Yvonne Carino from Central Mindanao University, and she's studying lichens with Manuela Del Forno. And this is Sheila Olympus, who's at UNC Wilmington, and she studies this very, very, actually, I think it's one of the top 20, Sorawia, and it's a relative of the kiwi in the Actinidiaceae, a very, very important genus there. And they're nice because they're kind of easy to collect. They're usually small trees, and they're usually flowering or fruiting, but still needs a lot of work. This is just an example of Vaccinium, and this one here is like what the first, on the lower left, that's one of the first species we described on the project, new species we described. This is actually Costera, but it just kind of highlights to me the fact that what is Vaccinium? It's really so much work needs to be done on Vaccinium, just the phylogenetics and the circumscription. Probably when it's all said and done, there will be one species of Vaccinium. It'll be the type, obviously. It'll be Uliginosum, a Linnaean name, and the rest will probably be split up into different genera. That's my guess. I mean, there's always the alternative of making one huge vaccinium, but and then separate sections or something like that. But it's 6 in one, half in the other. Okay, then we're also connected with All Asian Collections Network, so all our specimens are going to go on this network. BRIT is actually part of this project, and this is one of these digitization projects NSF funds, and so all our legacy specimens at BRIT will also be online as a result of this project. Just a sampling of the food. Filipinos love to eat, and they love to eat all the time, it seems like, because you have your breakfast, and you have your lunch, and you have your dinner, and then you have your meriendas, and meriendas are your snacks at 10 o'clock around, and then 2 o'clock, so you're always eating, and it's like, if you don't eat, it's not polite, so you have to eat. So this thing's pretty fun. This is called halo halo, or mixed, and this is kind of like ice cream, ube ice cream with sweetened condensed milk and all sorts of other things that have been added since I think it was invented like during the Japanese time in the Philippines. You got jackfruit there, and you've got this is, durian, and probably some of you know about durian. If you have durian in the room and you're just eating durian, even if you're not eating durian, right? Because it's just smells so high heaven. Some people love it and some people hate it. I don't know, I guess I'm neutral about it, but this is rambutan, a relative of lychee. This is kind of your sampling of meriendas, your sweets, and they cook bananas. And number one country for mangoes is hands down the Philippines. There's no question about this. And they just have the best taste. They're just so good. And we have them a lot. Then you have your banquet food, which is also really spectacular. Of course, your mounds of rice, and this in the middle here is your suckling pig, and that's actually not cheap. It's like, and it's really, really good. Pompano fish and all sorts of great food. And John, I'm sure, has told you that like we just work all day long, and that's what we do, and then we go home. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. We actually, once in a while, we have some fun. And this fellow here is not like flipping us off. It's actually a heart symbol. I don't know if you've ever seen this. I can't do it very well. It's a heart symbol. Yeah, you've probably seen it. Okay. And then, here we are relaxing and enjoying ourselves. And of course, the national sport of the Philippines is karaoke. Yeah. And so if you look online and you try to search under my name, you won't find any karaoke. You won't find any YouTube videos. So don't even try to look for karaoke under my name. And John never dances. Okay. All right. So for the future, we have one more expedition planned for June 2024, like I mentioned this year. We'll continue student mentoring. We'll bring experts to the BRIT Herbarium for specimen identification. And we're going to do this follow-up grant, hopefully, with continuing the XC2 component and actually trying to build in some kind of conservation angle. I don't know if it's going to be restoration or habitat corridors or something like that, but we really, really want to do this. And so just acknowledgments, and thanks very much for your